Good evening, folks. Welcome to another onX Hunt Masterclass. Tonight, we're going to be talking about all things turkeys and deep diving into the Hunt app to hopefully give you a few new insights, teach you a few new tips and tactics on how to use the Hunt app to find more birds and ultimately get them down your barrel and gun range. So I got Lake Pickle here, as well as myself, Jared Larson, and Lake is fortunate enough to be in Mississippi, and you don't got to wait any more than about 10 more hours, man. What's your plan for the morning?
Well, we're gonna hunt. I mean, that's the plan. I don't know. I mean, the weather looks pretty disgusting tomorrow. It doesn't look like turkey weather by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, it's opening morning. I would be out there with an umbrella if it took that. You can't miss it.
Heck yeah. You gonna be running some national forest. You got some private lined up. You taking some folks out. You the gunman. What's the situation?
Yeah, no, tomorrow I had some friends coming in. And so we're gonna go to a piece of private land that I have permission on. And then I'll see where my feet take me after that. But that's the plan for tomorrow, at least.
Now you've been out chasing some birds with some youth folks in Mississippi this week. Have you been hearing birds, getting on birds? Any good hunts?
It has been for how early it is, because even like we open early, but and also the birds act typically early. They're flocked up, and gobbling can be hit or miss. But I've been down, youth season, taking some kids out. The hunting public boys, they've been down, and so we've been running around with them, taking some kids. Tuesday morning, we should have had a gobbler shot. He just did what turkeys do, and when it was actually two longbeards, and they showed up when we saw them, they were 35 yards, and then they closed to about, one of them was about 20 yards, but they were just pretty hard off like the left, and the kid just couldn't get turned to get a shot, just kind of how it goes. But it was good. It was fun.
Learning experience. The kid will get better from that one. Well, sweet. We got a bunch of folks in here. I see everyone chiming in the chat where you're in here from. That's perfect. It's exactly what the chat is for, is saying, hey, I'm Jared in Montana waiting on turkey season, or talking about, the hunt you got planned for tomorrow. If you're a Mississippian, great spot for that. If you have questions that you want Lake or myself to address, please put them in the Q&A. That is where we'll be tracking, looking at 4 questions. And we'll try to address as many of those as we possibly can throughout the night to ensure that, you get the information you're looking for. Couple things with housekeeping. There are, multi-hundreds of folks in here. There's going to be more come in. All of your cameras and mics are off, so you don't need to worry about kids running around in the background or what you're doing. You are good as far as your mics and your cameras go. In this webinar, we're going to be giving away roughly $3,000 worth of a turkey gear package to one lucky winner. So that's going to be a Weatherby shotgun, Rob Roberts custom choke tube, double bolt blind, some decoys from Primos, a gift card from Old Tom, some goods from the Mossy Oak fellas, all sorts of good stuff that's going to leave you kitted up. Now, I just want to set the expectation for whoever wins this. We're going to reach out to you tomorrow. And when we post the giveaway link towards the end of the webinar, you are going to have to fill that giveaway link out tonight. It's going to expire at midnight. If you don't fill it out, and you reach it out to us tomorrow morning, it's going to be sorry, tough luck. So make sure that when that giveaway link gets dropped, open it up right away, enter yourself. We're going to do our darndest to get that Weatherby shotgun, which is in Bottomland, in your hands as soon as we can. If you're in Alabama and you're expecting it to be there for the opener on the 25th, don't hold your breath. But, if you got a mid-April season, we're going to work with the guys and gals at Weatherby to make sure we get that over to you promptly. So stay tuned for the giveaway. And without much further ado, Lake and I will kind of dive into how we're using the Hunt app to not only find good turkey habitat and locate likely areas to start when we're at home and what we're doing e-scouting, but also, take you along with our thought process as we're in the woods, and how do we use the Hunt app when, a bird gobbles, or we're setting up one on the roost, or things of that nature. And again, don't hesitate to chime in with questions in the Q&A. We'll keep track there and answer as many of them as possible. So, Lake, I'm going to kick it over to you to start off, seeing as you're in the hot seat for tomorrow morning. What are you looking at in onX when you're at home trying to figure out where you're going to start on opening day as far as locating turkeys and locating turkey habitat?
Sure. So if I, one thing that I always find myself doing, I mean, sure, there'll be spots that I'll hunt this year that I've hunted for several years that I have some level of familiarity with. But on the same side of that, like same with every spring, I'm gonna hit spots that I haven't been to before. That's just something that I typically enjoy doing. And so there's some things that I look for to just try to key in on turkey habitat, so to speak. And before I go straight into the app, I'm gonna kind of try to break down what that is. And it's typically on like a broad scale. If you're looking for how to find turkeys, how to locate a turkey, what you don't want to do, is look at like just this big area of timber and go, well, there's going to be a turkey in there somewhere. That absolutely can work. You're not narrowing down your odds very much. I mean, you could do that and go stand on the right high point and hear a turkey. That absolutely could happen. But if you work every day, or you have limited time to hunt, you kind of want to put yourself in a better situation. So I like trying to narrow that down as much as I can. And so turkeys need a number of different things in order to thrive. They do need woods. They need big woods. They need trees to roost in, obviously. And then with trees to roost in down here, most of the time that coincides with a creek system, a drainage sometimes. Jared and I, we were talking about the youth hunts that I've been on just this morning and the days prior. We hunted turkeys that were roosting on the same tiny drainage every morning. So roost trees, drainage systems, open areas, habitat edges. Where I tend to find turkeys are in areas where I find multiple habitat types coming together. One term I heard a biologist, a professor, say one time is it looks like a mosaic of different cover types. And so I'm going to attempt this screen share, Jared, and see if it works out for me. If it doesn't.
And for all you folks in the audience, Lake and I are probably going to bounce back and forth with screen shares. And so if that starts to get cumbersome from a viewer's perspective, please let us know in the chat. We'll keep an eye on that. But we're going to do our best. Lake is endemic to the South. I mean, the dude shot turkeys in 30 states, so he can talk about turkeys wherever they live. But he's going to kind of cover his home turf of the South. I'm going to kind of cover my home turf of the Midwest and kind of how our strategies differ across regions. We'll touch on the West, and if you have other questions, feel free to throw them in there. But yeah, let's see what Lake's looking at for habitat here. We got
All right, so Jared, you can see the screen. Good, you're good to go. Okay, so the first example that I would give somebody is if you're learning, like if you're like, I've never really tried to look at a map and go, I'm going to dissect this and try to figure out just by looking at a map whether or not a turkey wants to be there. And this is like seriously one of the best learning tips I could give somebody. If you've turkey hunted for any extent of time and you've turkey hunted maybe at a friend's place, at a buddy's place, a family land, public land, whatever, and you're aware of an area that you frequent where there's turkeys around every time, you just know that there's turkeys in that area, go and pull that spot up on the map and study it. Figure out, look at what's there. Look at what timber type is there. Look if there's fields nearby. Look at the creek system. And so if you get used to looking at a map in an area that turkeys like to be, that can really start to help it click in your head as far as where turkeys like to be when you're starting to look at areas that you haven't been to before. And so this is an area that I've hunted. It's here in Mississippi. And this is I'm going to show you one of the biggest things that I use right off the bat. And this is if I'm going to a brand new area that I've never been to before that I'm completely unfamiliar with. And so I'm going to go down here to my layers and I'm going to scroll to the trees, crops, and cover folder. And then I'm going to scroll down until I see this one right here says deciduous versus coniferous. And so what that's going to do is it's going to highlight on the map. I'll go ahead and turn it on. It's going to highlight on the map deciduous trees versus coniferous trees. In the Southeast, we have a whole running ton of plantation pines. And then deciduous trees, obviously, is going to be your hardwood, your oak trees. And so that layer does a couple of things for me. For one, it signifies where different habitat edges are. And again, loblolly pines down here can go multiple different ways. They can be horribly mismanaged and there won't be anything living in them. If they're managed correctly, if they're on a burn program, they can be fantastic for turkeys. You just kind of got to figure that out. But it points out to me the different habitat types. So if I look, I mean, let's just zoom in on this spot right here, that gobbler icon. I should have used a better waypoint. That was where one was roosted. It wasn't where I saw one strutting. But couple different things talking about a mosaic of cover and where I find turkeys. Like if we key in on this one spot, if we look right here to the west, we got a field, narrow field right there. We can see that turkey's roosted right off of a knob going off those topo lines, and then he's got fields all the way around him, and he's, I'm going to do 2-finger distance here. He's 150 yards off of a creek system. And so talking about familiarizing yourself with what you can look at on a map from an e-scouting perspective to go into a place that you haven't been to before, just start remembering those key things: open areas, drainage system, high points, or being right off of a high point. And then again, look at the, I mean, where he's at, look at the deciduous versus coniferous. I mean, he is right on an edge right there. I mean, directly on an edge. And so that can, just pulling that up and going through those quick things can get me so far ahead. And I mean, this is a process. I mean, there's more to it you can do, sure, but I mean, that's pretty much a process that I go through every single time that I'm looking at a new piece of ground.
Yeah, and like looking at Lake's map right here, the things that stand out to me, turkeys, like you said, transition area, edges, like those two words pretty much mean the same thing. It means different habitat types coming together in one location. And so obviously that's there with the coniferous versus deciduous layer. You can see where those edges are. But then, as Lake talked about, having a mosaic, you have open areas with these fields. I think everyone that's hunted turkeys knows that turkeys love to spend time in open areas. Their sight is their best sense. So being able to get out into the open is very important to turkeys. So, there's certainly places, in the Daniel Boone National Forest of Kentucky or Talladega in Alabama where there's turkeys in nothing but rolling timber forever and ever, but you're going to find more higher concentrations of turkeys that have open areas in close proximity to those diverse habitat types coming together. Add in some water and you're going to find turkeys in most of those locations. So yeah, I think that's a great example of the habitat type to certainly look for, especially in the Southeast.
So one other thing that I'd like to add, and this is a whole nother topic, but as far as e-scouting, I'll go ahead and pre-mark spots as far as like maybe a spot I want to park my truck, maybe if I just want to mark an area that I want to walk into. But I am like huge, I know Jared, you are as well, on like customizing waypoints. Because talking about just operating from an operating the app perspective, the last thing you want is for your map to be nothing but waypoints like this, just red X's everywhere. There's just so many different ways you can customize them. And so this is one of my favorite ones to share. So like, let's say this knob right here. I mean, it looks, if I'm standing all the way down here, I probably can't hear a turkey from all the way up here. So if I'm going to try to find another listening spot per se, I'll drop a waypoint right there. And this is just a thing I do. But if it's a spot where I don't want to go listen to, I drop a rabbit waypoint because rabbits have big ears. And that means I want to go listen there. Just kind of my own little coding system. But
and I'll tack on to that. So like my strategy for what Lake just did when I'm looking at the map and I've never set foot there and it's just an area of interest, I color those waypoints white every single time. So if you get a white waypoint from Jared Larson, good luck. Go check it out. I don't know anything about it, but then that at least tells me when I'm looking at the map that has no real significance other than when I was sitting on the couch, I thought it was an interesting spot that might hold turkeys. And so beyond that, when you are out turkey hunting, pick a color that is going to be representative of something meaningful. So for me, 2023, every single hunt I was on, it was purple tracks, purple waypoints. I know everything purple was from 2023. In 2024, everything is going to be yellow this year. So by having a system when you go in, yeah, it takes an extra 10 seconds to use a custom icon and a custom color so you don't have red X's everywhere, but it's going to be so helpful in the future, when you're looking back on your map to understand what those waypoints mean. So I'll share my screen here And we need more colors and icons. I agree, Patrick, especially on the more colors. Lake and I are harping on the engineers all the time about it. We'll get you some more here soon. So I'm going to share one thing that I look for in the Midwest here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Lake, let me know when you got my screen.
We got
So
it. Yep.
uh, the one layer that I use a lot in the Midwest, I grew up in Wisconsin near a really large marsh, and so growing up, it was kind of ingrained to me to utilize water and marshy areas to my advantage. So, like the deciduous versus coniferous layer down south, that can certainly still be used in the Midwest, as there's plenty of pines around to find those edges. But I honestly tend to use the wetlands layer and the U.S. crop distribution layer more when I'm in the Midwest. So you'll see when I turn this on, now my map really becomes a mosaic of colors. It's honestly a little bit distracting when you have multiples of these layers on. But what I'm looking at here, so you got this piece of state land right in the middle of my screen. And as I zoom in, you can see, there's a little creek that runs through here. And you can see that the dark blue is going to denote woody wetlands, and the lighter blue denotes herbaceous. So herbaceous is more like your cattail sloughs. The woody wetlands are going to be more of your willow, your dogwood, that type of cover. And so this does a couple things for me. I can see that there's multiple habitats meeting here between this swampy wetland as well as this woods along this creek. But it's also very close in proximity to a bunch of ag. So, when I tap on any of these ag fields, this is going to tell me what those fields were planted in last year. And so this layer updates every year in March. So right now it's showing 2022 data. Very soon it will update to 2023 data. But just using basic knowledge of crop rotations, you can understand, okay, if this was corn in 2022, it was probably beans in 2023. So it's probably going to be an old bean field this spring when you're out there turkey hunting. So just another way to find diverse habitat types in different areas. And I'm going to quick turn these layers off and show you another feature that I'm going to use quite a bit from home this year. And so this feature is an elite only feature. So you need our elite membership in order to have availability for this. But if you tap on your base map card, you're going to see this recent imagery option. And so as you can see, the recent imagery is a much lower resolution image, but it is updated every 2 weeks. And so right now you can tell that the landscape in Wisconsin is pretty bare and pretty brown. But what you can do with this date slider is click back through different points in time to understand what the landscape change is. So again, this is updating once every 2 weeks roughly, and we have historic imagery back until March. So especially useful if you're traveling, 2 hours to your hunt location, or maybe you have an out-of-state trip planned. As you see, and I slide this date scroller, you can see, when snow is on the ground, when snow levels have cleared off, when ice comes off of a lake, when water level is really high, if you're on a river that annually floods in the spring, or you are hunting a swampy area, to know, man, I'm going to have to bring my waders or a canoe in there to get to where I want to go. It's also a really good way if you're in the South to locate where has logging happened, where's the clear cut happened in recent times. If you're hunting near public, trying to find, again, that disturbance and edge creation of different habitat types. So using recent imagery is just really useful for a lot of different cases, especially if you have anywhere to travel, because you don't want to show up to your hunting spot 2 hours away only to find out that the water's too high and you can't get in there, or your whole block of timber was cleared out by a timber harvest company. So using recent imagery will really just give you a leg up in understanding what's going on at the terrain on any given 2 week period there.
Yeah, Jared, I'm glad you hit on that, and I should have said that earlier. The recent imagery thing, I know, just in the chat box there, right when we were getting started, I saw several people that were from the Southeast coming in here. And so if you live in the Southeast, all too well that timber practices, clear cuts, select cuts, whatever, they're happening all the time. This time of year, you're going to drive past a log truck just about every day. And so those are significant changes happening on the landscape. And I have vivid memories when I was a kid, back when I would print out a paper map and stuff it in my turkey vest. There were spots that I'd rolled up to or walked up to and be like, oh, this is clear cut, and I mean, you clear cut a place, sometimes the effect can be positive or negative, but it is a complete difference in how those turkeys are going to respond to it. And so that recent imagery, and far as being able to tell that and key up to it, that's makes a huge difference. You're not going to get caught off guard.
Yeah. And John Baker asked, like, do turkeys avoid timber cuts? So it's a tricky question. And I would say the answer from my end is no. In fact, like, I shot my first Alabama bird last year with Lake in a very fresh timber cut. And those birds were very clearly keyed in on that fresh disturbance of that land. They were in there bugging, they were in there, strutting around. But the reason we bring it up is, if you are rolling up to, your lease that's 200 acres and they just cleared out 120 acres of timber and you didn't know about it, that's clearly going to affect what the turkeys are doing, especially if, that was their core roost area or something of that nature. It's just having the awareness to be prepared. It's not that they avoid timber cuts or they're magneted to timber cuts. It's just having that awareness so you can plan better for your hunt and be as prepared as you can.
Right. So, I mean, like a clear cut, think about it this way. We were talking earlier about turkey habitat and what turkeys like, and we all know turkeys like open areas. They need them. That they like them. And so when you first have a clear cut, you're essentially creating a field. And what you're having also as well, especially a lot of times when stuff gets clear cut, it's canopied out timber. And so you have just this forest floor that has all this dormant seed bed. And so when you clear cut that, sunlight hits that ground, and so for a while, you have a bare field that turkeys are going to use. And for the first few years, when you have some fresh growth popping up, they'll continue to use it. Now, it'll get to a certain point where it's really, really thick. And it'll get a point where a hen will nest in it. And then it'll get so thick that it'll be good for a rabbit hunt and probably a deer bedding area, but that's about it. But for a while there, it is, a turkey does like it. But to hinge on what Jared was saying, it's more on like not being taken off guard that there's a big chunk of timber, because sometimes when they do that, you're like, hey, a turkey used to roost right there. Well, he's not anymore. There's no trees. So to answer your question, they definitely respond to a fresh clear cut positively, but I like to know that it's there.
So a couple questions came in on how to find recent imagery. So in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, you're going to see a little location crosshair. Right above that, you see it says SAT 2D. If you tap on that, that's going to open up your base map card. And so by and large with base maps, what I recommend, always run it in hybrid. The more information that you can get from your map, the better. That's going to give you topo lines over aerial imagery. But then if you're looking for recent imagery, you can just flip that on. And then leaf off imagery we have available. And I believe it's 13 or 14 states. We are working to add more states every single day. But you can do the same thing and just flip off or flip on leaf off imagery and just get a clear, winter aerial image picture. That way you can see through the leaves. But a couple other features I want to touch on to use from home before we dive into how we're using the app when we're in the field. Offline maps. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, no matter what you're doing, save a map before you go turkey hunting. So often, be it public, private land, whether I'm in Alabama, Montana, Wisconsin, Maine, you just run into spotty service. So save a map. All you do is click that new map, choose whether you want a high, medium, highest, whatever resolution you're interested in. Personally, I recommend medium, just because the combination of the amount of space it takes on your phone with the usability of the medium map just makes sense for me. I don't need to zoom in to see a particular tree, but I also can make this map large enough so that I can cover some real country and still stay within my saved map. But as you just saw, the larger I make this map, the larger that download size gets. So you can imagine if you start saving a plethora of 0.8 gigabyte maps, you're going to put a bunch of storage on your phone. So just be cognizant of that. And then, save that offline map, and then weather. So we recently updated our weather where if you tap, all I did was tap that weather square in the top right corner, and then you can move this little weather crosshair to anywhere in the country, and it's going to give you hyper localized weather for that exact area. And in a matter of 5 seconds, this will load up and tell you what the weather's doing. So, again, just another way to use the Hunt app. Everything's all in one spot for you to check out. So those would be my other 2 tips on things to utilize at home. So Lake, you want to get into how you're using it when you're in the field?
Absolutely. Let me, I was pulling up, I saw a question on there that I wanted to address. So I was trying to find a spot on my map where it would make the most sense. But
Well,
soon as
while you're looking for that, I know some people were asking about burns. A fresh burn is quite literally a turkey magnet. At least that's my take and my experience. If you can find an area that was freshly burned, obviously if it was burned yesterday, it's still going to be pretty charred. But I would say within that first 2 week period of a fresh burn, especially if you get some rain afterwards, you're going to start seeing those really fresh green shoots. Birds are going to be in there picking those green shoots. They're going to be in there bugging. They're going to be in there strutting because now that's an open area. There's going to be a bunch of new growth. So if you can find a burn, you're gonna find some turkeys near that burn.
Yeah, and so the other thing is like talking about mosaic of cover type of thing. And so what you run into a lot of times is like, so if someone has like a large property, you'll see what biologists suggest they do is burn it in different fragments. They won't say, hey, take all of your 3,000 acres and burn it all at once. They're going to take chunks here and there, because what burning does is it resets succession. It resets everything. And so what you have is all these different areas of your property that are at different levels of succession. So you have some bare ground here, you have some stuff that hasn't been burned in 2 years here. Well, that's good brooding cover. That's a good spot where a hen can nest. And so on and so forth. Again, turkeys need a mosaic of cover. They need different types of habitat. And so burning in different stages aids that along. So going right into, there we are. Perfect. All right. Let's get back to this screen share. Hang on. Let me know, Jared.
Ain't up yet.
Not yet?
Nope.
Should be. There we
There
go.
we go. Now we're cooking.
Okay. So to kind of reiterate what Jared was saying about, as far as running your maps and like what I'm going to be doing during actual hunt. So the aerial imagery of this place right here, say I were to zoom into this right here, right? If I'm looking at this, as far as I know, I can definitely tell there's some openings right there. And there's some timber around it, but I want y'all to watch what happens when I turn this on hybrid mode. That place is pretty ate up with topography. And if I don't know that going in, or if I don't know that when I'm setting up on a turkey, that could be pretty treacherous to my success, because especially in a place that's as terrain laden as this, I could hear a turkey gobbling. I could set up trying to call him in and have no idea that there's a giant canyon or holler between me and him. And so hybrid maps, I can't think of a time where I don't have hybrid maps on while I'm hunting. Another thing that I'll do as far as and I can't really demonstrate it right here because I won't be moving, but Jared, I know you do this as well. If I'm hunting, I'm running my tracker like 100% of the time. Sometimes I end up deleting the track after it's over, but I like going back and looking at what ground I covered. And so tracker, just to turn it on, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it says tracker right there. You hit that button and you say start. And then some people have the idea that they have to leave that up the whole time. You hit start, swipe that down. You can lock your phone. You can do whatever in the world you want. That tracker is still going to be running. Another thing that I do is drop waypoints constantly. Let's say that I'm walking right up through here and I see some scratching right here. Well, 10 out of 10, I'm going to add a waypoint. I'm going to, if depends if there's like a turkey goblin or something I'm trying to move fast. I might not customize it right then and there. I may just leave the red X for the moment and then customize it later. But if nothing's like just going crazy and I don't have to move quick, then I'm going to take the time to find where it's, find where it says, scratch in or turkey tracks, save. And what that does is, say I go and hunt this property like a few weeks later or the next year, then I start to build a history on this place of like, hey, 2 springs ago there was a turkey goblin, right here off this ridge right here. Let's see if there's one there again right now. I drop waypoints on everything I see that I think is beneficial, that I think might add to the hunt in coming years. And another thing too is, you start dropping waypoints on everything, you can kind of, in some instances, start to build up tendencies. Like you can figure out, like there's always sign right here, there's always turkeys doing this right here. I'm very, very big on that. The other one is, as far as doing stuff that if I need to get stuff that happens really, really quick, if there's a turkey goblin, I'm moving quick. I use both of them. There's compass mode, and then there's 2-finger distance.
Before you get into those, Lake, because you have a good property pulled up. So, obviously hybrid mode gives you a great visual of what the landscape is doing with those topo lines. But if you are not as adept at reading topo lines and understanding what those lines mean with the terrain, and you have service, now you need service in order to do this in the woods, you can flip it into 3D. So Lake, flipper into 3D. And then from 3D, you can use that elevation exaggeration slider on the right. And so the reason we built that elevation exaggeration slider, like if you use your thumbs and pan down a little bit to look more across the landscape. Yep, perfect. And then slide that. Yeah. And so the reason we built the elevation exaggeration slider is because so often in places, like a lot of places in Mississippi and in the Delta, be it Kansas, that has less terrain, less topography, 3D didn't really make a lot of that terrain come to life. And so that elevation exaggeration really allows you to bring that 3-dimensional aspect to life. And if you don't know how to read topography, using the 3D elevation exaggeration can be a tool to help you learn how to use that topography. Yeah, so this place that Lake is looking at right now is pretty pancake flat. It looks like there's maybe about 20 feet of elevation difference.
Yeah, it's a river bottom, which again, if you hunt some in the southeast, the place that I was just looking at is in Mississippi. So that place, there's definitely spots that have terrain, but if you end up in an area like this where you're on a river bottom and it's primarily flat, 3D exaggeration can either, one, supplement topo, or it can also teach you how to read topo. But again, look at where I have this gobbler roost tree marked. It's right off, again, in this river bottom, it is extremely subtle terrain change, but it is terrain change, and it's right off a little drainage system. Again, it's not, when you start putting these things together, it's not a surprise that turkey roosted right there. It starts to make sense after some time. But yeah, Jared, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that can be an excellent way to start putting the pieces together of how to read topo lines, because topography and turkey hunting, they go hand in hand. To be consistently successful turkey hunting, you need to understand topography 100%.
And we're going to circle back to that topography, comment that Lake just made, because there's quite a few questions on that. And we're going to leave 15 minutes for questions for sure, because we got a pile of them. But before that, Lake, I'm going to take over the screen share here and show everybody what you and I both believe to be the best feature that we have for spring turkey season. And that is our new compass mode. So pulling up the app here. Right now I'm looking at Wisconsin, but I'm sitting in Montana right now. So I'm going to hit the little crosshair icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's going to bring me to my current location. You can see that I'm sitting here in Lolo, Montana right now. And so hit that crosshair once, brings you to your current location. You hit it twice, and now it gives me this blue sight cone that as I turn the direction I'm facing, my phone is moving with me. And so that becomes really helpful. But take it a step further, the little compass rose icon populates towards the bottom right there. If I hit that, now it gives me a compass bearing at the very top of my screen. It still moves with me dynamically as I'm turning my phone and pointing it in different directions. And it also has this dynamic hashed line that on the left-hand side, you can see the distances attached to the hashes. And as I zoom in, those distances change in real time. And so what Lake and I really love using this feature for is, let's say you're standing up on a high point, you're listening in the morning, and a bird rings out, he gobbles. Well, the first thing that you are doing, really before you're even conscious of it, is you're trying to understand how far away that gobble was simply based on how loud it was. And so with that, I hear a bird gobble and I'm like, oh, shoot, that bird's probably about 200 yards away, just based upon the topography and how loud that gobble was. Well, once I figure he was about 200 yards away, then I can look at this map and start to figure out, okay, he's exactly due west of me from where he gobbled. And then I can analyze both the topography, which I have hybrid on right now, but as you can see, there's no topo lines on my map, so it's pretty flat. But I also can analyze the aerial imagery and the vegetation right at a glance at the same time as analyzing the topography, which is going to allow me to really get a pinpoint understanding of where that bird is standing. Is he in that opening right there at 199 yards, or, maybe he's standing on that gas line, or he's in the corner of that field. And then you can tap this rangefinder icon, and all I'm doing is placing my finger on that hashed line where that circle is and moving it up and down this hashed line to quickly drop a waypoint right where I believe that bird is standing. And what that allows you to do is just really have a great idea of where that bird is. And so in this example, if that bird was right where I dropped that waypoint at 189 yards, for me personally, I am closing the distance. So long as there is not an open line of sight from him to me and I have the topography or the cover to close the distance, I'm always going to try to get into that, 120, 100-yard mark. The way I look at it is if you move in too close, you're not going to kill them because you're going to bump them. So I always err on the side of caution a little bit. It's always very situational. If I'm in the last hour of a hunt and I got nothing to lose, I'm going to go in there and get as close as I possibly can. But generally, I'm going to err on the side of caution, try to get to about 100 yards, and then try to bring that bird the rest of the way to me. But the really, really key takeaway here is when you pinpoint that bird, analyze the terrain. Make sure you don't have a fence between you and that bird. Make sure there's not a creek. Flip on leaf off imagery if it's available in your state, or really zoom in and analyze, is there a bunch of deadfall that bird is going to get hung up on? Really look closely on what is between you and that bird so that you can make the best setup possible. Because at the end of the day, your setup on calling in a turkey is everything. If you don't have a good setup, you're probably not going to kill that bird.
Just judging off the chat, Jared, I think majority of the folks are really liking that compass mode.
Heck
Lots of I saw somebody asking there. I was like, somebody said they wish they knew about it last season. Well, it is pretty new, so it wasn't even here last spring, was it? Or no?
It was in employee testing last turkey season because I remember using it a little bit, but it didn't go live for customers in production until last summer. So definitely check that one out for turkey season. And we got some cool things coming that you are going to have to activate compass mode this turkey season in order to win an Osceola turkey hunt we're giving away here in a month. So there's a little tidbit of knowledge drop for you, but that'll come later down the road. If you're subscribed to onX, you'll hear about it.
Another thing that I would throw in about compass mode is I've seen this asked or stated in some of the things we put out about it. A lot of times people say, they're like, man, once the time you go through all those steps, you could have figured it out on your own or whatever. You got to realize, like in these videos or like in the demonstration Jared just did, it's like a tutorial based step by step by step. Like you can flip that compass mode on and do that so quick. I use compass mode every day this past week. I used it in South Florida. I use it all the time. It does not take long. I would say if you haven't, you know, gotten in the app and just played around with it yet, just go in there and flip compass mode on. You'll be amazed. You'll be like, oh yeah, I got to use this. It's like this is one of those features that we came out with, and I was pumped because I knew how useful it was going to be.
I mean, just simply being able to hunt an unfamiliar spot and have the ability to pinpoint a gobbling turkey, usually within 30 yards of where he's standing. I mean, it's invaluable to making the right setup. So I would say by and large, those are the features that Lake and I are going to be using all spring. We have a plethora of questions. And so the way I'm going to do this, Lake, is I'm probably just going to rattle one for you to answer, and then I'll take ones that I feel I'm adept at answering. But when trying to locate a gobbler for the first time, what do you suggest as a starting point, starting tactic should be?
So I am again. I'm gonna. If I don't know, I'm assuming we don't know where this is unfamiliar ground. So I'm gonna go through all the steps I went through earlier. I'm gonna locate on the map what I appear to be like. This is a lot of different cover types coming together. There should be a turkey really close to here. Then I'm going to gauge. I'm going to try to find a high point, a knob, which again you can figure that out using 3D exaggeration or a topo map. I'm going to try to find a high point that I can get to relatively easily without risking bumping a bird. And then for optimal down here, you know, down here at least early in the season, being down here, optimal chances at finding one, I'm going early in the morning before daylight, trying to hear a roost gobble, because that's going to be your highest percentage at hearing a turkey is going to be on the limb on the roost. And sometimes I like to just let them do it on their own. But if not, I'm going to hoot at them like an owl, because a hoot owl is the most tried and true method of getting a turkey to gobble on the limb that there is.
Yep, you nailed it. Find a high point, get to high points, call from high points, locator calls from high points. Just put yourself in a position to hear as far as possible. I'll take this one. E-scouting tips for out west, with terrain being so different than the South or Midwest. My biggest tip for out west is find private land borders that private either has ag or cows or horses, whatever it may be. That's where I've found the most success is hunting along those private land borders. I don't think it's a secret that a lot of Merriams and Western birds are, you know, they can be thrown in a category of yard birds. Now, obviously, that's not always the case. You can certainly get in the wilderness and in the mountains and find some true mountain birds, but hunt those borders, use onX, make sure you're confident that you're staying legal and ethical. But again, you're looking for the same things. You're looking for open areas, you're looking for water, and you're looking for where multiple habitat types meet. So, you know, focus on those private land borders, and you'll find some turkeys out west. I think the biggest thing is you're just going to have to put in more windshield time when you're scouting, looking for turkeys out west, because you have more ground to cover. Oh, da 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 da. I am fairly new to turkey hunting. That said, as you use onX for turkey hunting, what do you look for when keying in for roosting areas?
Uh, Creek systems for one. And I'm not saying that's not the only place a turkey's going to roost, but like that's down here. At least that's like one of the first things I'm going to look for is a creek system, because they are just so consistent at roosting along creeks and drainages. Field edges are a big one. We were talking about cutovers earlier. If you know there's turkeys in the area already, and there's, you know, big enough trees to roost around a fresh clear cut, high chance of them roosting around there. Field edges, like I was saying, and creek systems, and then that's the big ones for sure.
Yeah, and I
Here,
would say, you know, if you're in the Midwest, or, you know, in the Midwest, find big cottonwoods, big oak trees. You know, they're generally turkeys are looking for large, stable limbs. And oftentimes I'm looking at ridges. You know, if there's any type of topography, turkeys generally, before they go to roost, they're going to get up on a high point. That way they don't have to put much effort into their flight. They're going to pitch off that high knob, that high ridge, and they're going to find a branch in fairly close proximity that they don't really have to put a whole lot of effort into flying in. And it's also the same when they pitch down. You know, they don't want to have to flap their wings a bunch. If they can more or less flutter and float down, that's what a turkey's going to do. So looking for creek system, ridges, and then big mature trees. If you're out west, locating turkey roosts is a heck of a lot easier because typically there's not as many suitable trees to roost in. First time turkey hunter. What is your take on decoys for a new turkey hunter? If you're going to run them, what combination of decoys are you running?
You know, decoys, and this is not from like a turkey philosophy standpoint at all. Like that's just like more of a like a tactic thing for me. I get typically if I'm hunting in the woods, I'm not going to use a decoy. I've just had too many instances where a turkey approaches a turkey in the woods and they don't like it, or they'll stay too far away from it. Even if it's just a solo hen decoy, I typically stay away from decoys inside the timber. If we're talking about decoys in fields and stuff, um, you know, it really is a coin toss. The safest route is a single hen. If you're in a field, I've never seen turkeys just spook off a single hen unless you're talking about like heavily pressured turkeys. That can happen sometimes. The next thing up from that, as far as like going from safest to most risky, is a hen and then a Jake decoy. But you know, I've seen gobblers on the wrong day get wary of those as well. And then if you're really going for the gusto, you can put a strutter out there, which again, I mean, using a strutter is like feast or famine most of the time. Like you're either going to kill a turkey over it, or they're going to come around the corner and look at it and then go the other way. You know, so
Yeah. My
I
take on a decoy. Oh, go. Sorry, I thought you were
no,
done.
no, no. Go ahead, go ahead. That was about it.
I was just gonna say, if you're a new turkey hunter, I think a decoy can be really advantageous, just because it helps put a turkey in an exact spot that allows you to shoot, and it takes the pressure and the eyes off of you as a caller, and puts their eyes on the decoy. So when I'm taking out new turkey hunters, I like to have a decoy. I like to run a hen and then either a Jake or a strutter. I don't really find that it makes a whole ton of difference. I do like to have a real tail fan on male decoys that I use. But as a new hunter, it just keeps those birds focused coming into a decoy and allows you a little bit more room for error to make that movement, or just have a little bit more time to settle in and make the shot. All right. When a bird just keeps hammering from the same location, he's not budging. When do you decide, or what is it that makes you decide when to get aggressive or stay put? Talk us through what's going through your head when you got a hammering gobbler, but he's not budging.
Well, if it's this time of year and he's not budging, then I'm gonna probably assume that he has hens because it's early. And so one or two things, like if I'm in a spot where I know, like if I'm in the same drainage system with these turkeys, and I think there's a good chance that they drift down the same drainage, then I may just see if I can wait them out. If I, if I'm not familiar with the area, if I think I have enough terrain to make a loop on them and get closer, because sometimes that works. If you can just kind of push in tighter to him, that can work as well. But if he's not budging and I've been sitting there for half an hour, if I'm going to move, it's going to be at that time. But it can be very situational.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to definitively answer. I will say, if you talk to a fair amount of folks that have killed a lot of turkeys, they'll tell you that patience is your number one weapon. If you can be patient, oftentimes it is going to produce good things for you. But I think it's very situational as far as when you move in on a gobbling turkey that isn't budging. But even more so, I think it depends on what you have for cover and topography in order to close the distance. There's absolutely zero sense in making a risky play trying to close the gap on a gobbling turkey that's going to leave you busted, because all you've done is made that turkey even more difficult to kill. So I would say tend to play it safe, especially if you're on private ground. If you're on public ground and you only have a day or the weekend to hunt, I'd say let loose and get aggressive. Here we go. All right. Hit us with a couple other layers beyond what we showed Lake that you might turn on at some point this spring.
That's a good question. I like, there's like I'll turn on roadless area layer sometimes. That's if I'm like, if I a lot of times if I'm going to a new area, if I pull up to a new spot, new state, whatever, and I see trucks and people and like way more hunters than I care to see, I'll turn that on as a way to try to find areas that are least likely to have a lot of hunting pressure. So that's a good one. Another one would be I still like using acorn producing oaks. I can decipher some of that just turning on deciduous or coniferous. But again, I had a guy look me straight in the face one time and say a turkey won't eat an acorn. And I promise you he will. And so again, especially, just trying, if I'm really trying to key in on stuff, acorn producing oaks is a good one. Um, I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably.
The one that I'll say is, there's a lot of states these days that are doing really awesome work and trying to open up access for hunters through private land. So, make sure you look in individual state layers. In Kansas, it's walk-in hunting areas. In Montana, it's block management areas. In Iowa, it's IHAP. I forget what IHAP stands for. But those layers are often categorized as red polka dots that offer public access to private land for hunters. I just please read the regulations and ensure that that BMA is open in the spring. Do your best to be very respectful to the landowner. Don't be driving places you shouldn't. Pick up your hulls. Remember, empty hulls are litter. So make sure you are caring for the ground that these people are generously opening up, so that way we can have it for years to come. Um, okay, I'll take this one as far as how do your tactics change when you get west of the Rockies? So, having lived in Montana the last 7 years, I do a lot of chasing Merriams, and I would say cover more country, call more often, and make those calls nice and high pitch. I don't know what it is about a high pitch yelp, but Merriams, they just eat it up. The other thing I'll say, like, there'd be a lot of days back in Wisconsin or down where Lake's at in Mississippi that I've hunted where the afternoon can almost feel like a wash. Like it's a drag to go out there because the odds of you striking a bird to get going in the afternoon is just not that high. It's much more of a game of patience. Not out west. I don't care whether it's, on the roost off the limb or 3 p.m. I'm confident that if there's a turkey in the area, you start hammering on them, start cutting into them, get high pitched on your box call or your mouth yelper, and you can get a bird going. So I would say that's how my tactics change. I'm much more aggressive. I'm covering more ground, and I'm calling a hell of a lot more. Anything to add from your Merriam exploits?
I mean, like, again, they calling a lot more is like coming from a hunter from the southeast. It's usually less is more with the yelping. Merriam's, it's like yelp at them. That's, I mean, it's hearing them and then learning how to close distance on them, which again, coming from a predominantly flatlander, learning to read topography was I mean, like, it was, I mean, you got to know how to read topography if you're going to hunt Merriams because you're going to be in some hilly terrain. I mean, you just are.
Well, sweet. We are going to drop the giveaway link right now. So we're going to drop it in the chat. We'll drop it a couple times over the next few minutes. Click on that link immediately. Go fill it out. If you forget and you don't fill it out until tomorrow morning, you're going to be just bum out of luck. So fill that giveaway link out. Again, we're giving away $3,000 worth of turkey hunting gear to somebody in this webinar right now. So make sure you fill out that link. Lake and I are going to answer a couple more questions to make sure you guys have adequate time to get that giveaway link a few times. And then we'll bid you all adieu. Lake, favorite state to hunt turkeys?
Man, I think, I mean, if I'm being honest, I would say here at home, but I know that's kind of like, we don't want to hear that. So if I'm ex-naying my home state, I'm gonna say New Mexico. New Mexico was the first state I ever hunted Merriam's in. I dreamed about, I mean, those big white fanned, crazy goblin sounding turkeys almost were like a figment in my imagination until I went there and saw them and heard them for the first time. So New Mexico just always has a special place to me.
Yeah, I'd say for me, You know, again, my cop-out answer would be my home state of Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin simply because it's so diverse. You can hunt the western portion and be right along the Mississippi and bluff country. You can go north and be in never-ending blocks of timber. But North Carolina has been my favorite exploratory state. I absolutely loved hunting North Carolina last year. Lots of public land, tons of turkeys, great access. So that's what I would go with. All right, couple more. What kind of shells you running this year, Lake?
I'm shooting I'm shooting tungsten, shooting Apex number nines. Shoot federal number nines as well. Nines, I could shoot a 7 and 9 blend, but just the straight nines patterned better. And so that's what I'm sticking with. I've been shooting 9 tungsten for quite a while now.
Yeah, I'm likewise shooting some more hand load stuff from Migra. I think I got a box of 7s and a box of 9s I just ordered. Dropping the giveaway link again one more time. Fill that out. Get your chance at winning $3,000 worth of awesome turkey gear. And I'm gonna have Lakey answer one last question here. How do you handle silent birds?
That's a tough one. There's no way around that. That is a tough one. They're a lot harder to kill when you can't hear them. There's no way around that. Being patient and really, really understanding turkey sign, really, really understanding turkey habitat is going to be your best friend. One thing I will say is that, like, even in my experience, even where turkeys don't gobble, they still drum. So be aware of that, because you're sitting there not hearing a turkey for hours on end. It is real easy to let your guard down, and then you catch that subtle, and you know. But as far as like things to do, if they're not gobbling, you gotta go to an area that you know they like to frequent, and you just have to. My buddy Jordan calls it doing a log man. That means you just sit there like a log and you don't move and you just be patient. You liked that, didn't you, Jared?
I did like that because yeah, it goes back to patience will kill more turkeys than anything else. But for me, you know, everything about turkey hunting, as far as me enjoying the experience, has to do with communicating with that bird. Now, sometimes there is no beating the silence of a woods, you know, especially late season if you're hunting public that's been hammered. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start covering ground. If I can't find a bird that's gobbling, I'm going to have a really tough time sitting on the same tree for 3 hours. I do a lot of tree stand sitting all October and November, so I don't got much left in me for April and May. So I'm gonna beat leather with my feet and go find a bird that wants to play the game I'm interested in playing. So with that, giveaway link is up there one more time. You'll have about 10 more seconds as I ramble a do here to click on that one. So make sure, where in NC is your go-to, Jared? Well, I was hunting Western North Carolina. That's the only time I've been there, but get into them big woods, go run around and you'll find some birds gobbling. Without further ado, hopefully Lakey gets to go, watch a bird flop in the morning, at least hear gobble, and the rest of us are going to be waiting on go for a little while unless you're in Mississippi or Alabama. So thank you all for tuning in. We will draw a winner tomorrow, send out an email to that winner tomorrow. And if you guys are still tuned in, we have 2 more turkey webinars this spring, one on calling tips and tactics, one on a vest dump. And again, we are giving away $3,000 worth of turkey gear to somebody in attendance on both of those classes. So make sure you sign up for those future master classes. Would love to have you guys back. And thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
So yeah.